The most important thing about a mission is the patch. And the best patches are the ones that have your name on it. Now here's Endeavour. We've done this a couple times by now, so we've gotten really good at walking out. And we're getting off the van, and believe it or not, we're saying this is the one day that we're not going to go. And you could see that it's a little bit tight strapping in as we get the pilot in there. And you could see folks on the middeck, the flight deck crew. And now we're there for a couple of hours, and finally we actually are getting the go as we remove the white room. And this will kind of speak for itself.
We're go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour, completing Kibo and fulfilling Japan's hope for an out-of-this-world space laboratory.
Houston, Endeavour, full program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
The camera views we have now are just amazing. Always a great moment when the solids separate, and you can see here that we have main engine cutoff for MECO as we finally achieve orbit and weightlessness, and what a great feeling for everybody. Here's a great shot that was taken by Chris Cassidy of the tank as we photograph that before it re-enters. Remember, it's the only part that does not get reused. We open up the payload bay for the very first time, get our view of the planet out the back window at the same time that we see everything in our cargo bay. Here's a wonderful first view of our beautiful Earth. And there's Tim Copra, and there was Tom Marshburn, Julie, folks very quickly getting ready to go to work, Doug Hurley. We haven't been up there very long. And after a couple days, it's time to go ahead and find this thing called the space station. So fortunately, I didn't lose it. Here's a great view of what we carry in our payload bay. This is the going to be the exposed facility, the JEF. That's the jelly we'll attach to it. We'll see it later. And this is something called the ICC Integrated Cargo Carrier that has several payloads and batteries. I believe you could tell that this is just slightly sped up, but performed a valuable role for this great photography of our underside to make sure that the team on the ground can determine that our vehicle was in a good condition for entry. Hard to believe that we actually did this. But it was phenomenal. And here we are coming aboard. We're going to go ahead and dock right there on the space station. And as we come aboard, you'll see some of the targets that we lined up. You have a crosshair right here that we use for visual alignment, and it's blurry here, but in the camera it tells you that we're pretty much aligned. As we go ahead and open the hatch, and we have a very excited station crew of 6 on board waiting to welcome us.
Let's take a tour of the International Space Station. It is absolutely huge. Here's a view from the commander window. We saw the Japanese module. That was the European module. Here's part of NASA's Node 2, and at the very top there, one of the Canadian robotic element. So we go down. Oh, taking care of cables in weightlessness is not fun. We turn a corner into the shuttle airlock and then turn another corner into the space station. You have to do a bit of a 90-degree turn in order to realign yourself. This, of course, is a little sped up again. Here's Koichi Wakara, that was really glad to see us because we were his ride home. This is the European module. Columbus. We turn around, and we're seeing Bob Thirsk inside the Japanese module with which we worked extensively. And particularly, there is a small closet up there and two windows that are absolutely great. Watch. That's what you see. Unbelievable sight. Especially when we had our spacewalkers out there. We could see them like if they were real close. We continue on through the node 2 and into the main lab, Destiny, the US lab. This is it looks like a closet, but it's actually a sleep station. Each crew member that stays on station for several months has a place to sleep and put their things. Tim Copra, who came up with us, is already exercising. There's Frank Devine from Belgium. We couldn't help it but to stop and look at the robotics workstation because we were going to spend a lot of time there. Continue on, exiting the lab into Node 1, one of the first modules that was brought in space in 1998. And here's a view of the airlock where our spacewalker were already busy taking care of their equipment. And now we're passing from the US part of the station into the Russian part. This was one of the Soyuz capsule to return to Earth. There's Roman Romanenko, one of the Russian crew member, through the FGB, a Russian cargo module, into another pathway to go to yet another Soyuz capsule. This is the vehicle that some of the station crew members take to return to Earth. There's the commander of station, Gennady Padalka from Russia, where he was doing an experiment, and this is the very tip of station. We'll turn around one last time so that you can see. It's the size of 2 football fields from one end to the other. But we didn't have much time to explore. We had to go to work right away. First thing first, we had to install the exposed facility, which of course was way too long for us to talk about, so we called it the JEF. But really what it is, it's a exposed facility, it's a port. In order to get it on station, we had to pick it up with one arm, pass it to the other, and then pick it up with the same arm that was used to pick it out of the cargo bay. Quite a complicated robotic ballet, which was devised by our almighty flight controllers and planners on the ground. This is extremely sped up. We don't operate big pieces this fast. So when it was properly aligned, and this was practiced on the ground several times, Doug Hurley and Koichi Wakata aligned it up and installed it, and here it was in its final position. It's still up there. Well, we had to do this kind of handoff of pieces of our cargo bay 3 more times in the mission. So we picked up a piece, we handed it off to the other arm and installed it on station. Here comes the Jelly, which carried 3 Japanese payload that we would then use the Japanese arm, first time we would use it in an operational manner, to pick up those payloads that would be installed on the exposed facility to do science in the vacuum and space for months to come. We had 3 of those payloads, so we had teams. Each payload was done by a different team of robotic operator, and you see them right here, and installed one at a time over the course of 1 day onto the exposed facility. And here's the Jelly empty. It then got picked up yet again by the big arm, given to the shuttle arm, and put back in the cargo bay to come back home with us.
So in order to pull off 5 EVAs, we had a 4-people team, Tim, Dave, Tom, and myself. You can see on to make a flight day 4 EVA happen, which is a day after undock, there's a lot of equipment that needs to be transferred immediately, and that earlier picture was Dave doing just that. Getting the folks in the crew lock is no small task. There are 2 big, cumbersome guys in the suits, plus all the umbilicals, and routing those umbilicals so we don't get all tangled up took us a few learning curves, but we got it. A lot of integrated robotics on this mission, which which is very communications intensive, which we practiced for quite extensively on the ground. You can see Doug and Julie would drive Dave around on the arm, this here on EVA-2, as he's going into position to grab some of the large ORUs that will place to their storage platform on the station. Down here you can see Tom through Dave's helmet camera as Tom's getting in alignment to help provide clearance views. This is the SCAN antenna, which gave Dave nightmares prior to launch as he worried about that banging that antenna. Dave likes to say that he's happy he lives in the future where the antenna is in good shape, not the other future. Here's Dave installing the pump module. This is an interesting piece of equipment because the module itself is larger than the platform that it sits on, so it's difficult to see the alignment as he puts it in there, and it took a lot of coordination between Tom and Dave in order to pull that off. The next phase of the EVAs got into batteries, and here you can see two of us working with the batteries. They're about 5 feet by 5 feet by 2 feet or so and weigh several hundred pounds. And they actually move fairly well and stable once you get them out of their attachment spots. But they did require a significant amount of force. That force, which you can see, makes the arm oscillate, and that's what gave Julie and Doug their nightmares. So we would do a technique called a shepherding or handing it back and forth. And this is MLI. We heard earlier a group gave an award for that, and I'm sorry to those folks that I had to throw your MLI overboard. This is a view out the Japanese window as on EVA-5 when Tom and I were out there working on some cameras to install, as well as prepare some handrails for later use. This is a view of the small camera that we installed. And you can see the safety tethers that we use strung along, and that's where you have to pay particular attention to making sure those are straight and don't get tangled.
Well, it's hard work to work in a spacesuit, but it's easier inside where you aren't encumbered by that pressure suit. Living in space is an acquired, learned talent or art. Some people are better at it. These guys are really good at it at this point. Julie's very good. There are some collisions. Definitely don't try this at home. You can lose track of the ceiling and the floor if you don't pay attention. It's kind of fun to do. Sometimes it feels like you're crawling up out of a manhole or diving straight down. Meals are a lot of fun. The pressure comes off. You hear lots of languages in this space station. It's very international. Foods from many countries, music from many countries. It's really a very interesting meeting ground between people, and the discussions and philosophy that is exchanged between the work is pretty fascinating. It definitely does bring the people from many countries together. It serves that purpose. The food is rehydrated, kind of like camping food. It's extremely good. That's pretty dangerous, Roman. Roman had his specialty breakfast tacos there. They're glued together with taco sauce and eggs. You got to get the mixture just right. You have to maintain this space station and spacecraft just like any other home. I hear you vacuum at home. Doug, please.
Okay, the end of the docked phase of the mission, saying goodbye was hard because we had a great time with all our friends, but we felt like we had accomplished everything we set out to do, and here we go. Mark gave me the keys to Endeavour, and I got to do the undock and fly around. Some of the most incredible views I've ever seen in my life. You can see the shadow of Endeavour there in the solar rays. obviously slightly sped up. Not a lot, though. I flew it pretty fast. There's a view from space station of us doing our fly around.
We actually did not feel we'd had enough to do on this mission, so we were able, on the day before we came home, to deploy a couple of satellites. That satellite was actually designed and built by graduate students from Texas A&M and University of Texas together. This is a Navy satellite we also deployed. It actually was supposed to come apart, as you see here. And it was good that we had studied up on that so we knew what to expect. There's another satellite that's about to come out of the canister there, and it offered just wonderful views as well as some good tracking and data for the investigators as well. And you could really see orbital mechanics in work there. It was a beautiful sight. The mid-deck team put together a great deorbit plan for us. Here we are on landing day. I got to join the flight deck crew for the landing. We're all very excited about coming home at this point. That's tendrils of plasma that are coming up over the overhead windows, about 3,000 degrees on the outside of the orbiter at that point. We're just starting to feel the beginnings of any acceleration, some G's. There's Roman demonstrating that with one of his cue cards. I thought we were experiencing about 10 G's, and Roman said, okay, there's 0.1 G now. And it really hits you pretty hard, but it's very fascinating. The re-entry is very fast. It seemed it was seconds between Central America, Cuba, and then suddenly over Florida. You know, all commanders say that they fly some pretty good landings, but if you ever really want to know, just talk to the mid-deck crew and the rest of the crew. And I'll have to say that no one actually knew that we had touched the ground. It was such a smooth landing. And our families were very happy to see us come home. We were happy to be able to see them here pretty soon. And then finally, we had a chance to walk out and see our orbiter. Everybody was feeling remarkably well. I think every now and then I needed a little help to make sure I was standing up straight. There's Chunky helping me out a little bit. But everybody was looking real good. And so again, thank you to everyone. That's our video presentation tonight.
Roger, roll, Endeavor.
The camera views we have now are just amazing. Always a great moment when the solids separate, and you can see here that we have main engine cutoff for MECO as we finally The most important thing about a mission is the patch, and the best patches are the ones that have your name on it. Now here's Endeavor. We've done this a couple times by now, so we've gotten really good at walking out. And we're getting off the van, and believe it or not, we're saying this is the one day that we're not going to go. And you could see that it's a little bit tight strapping in as we get the pilot in there. We achieve orbit and weightlessness, and what a great feeling for everybody. Here's a great shot that was taken by Chris Cassidy of the tank as we photograph that before it re-enters. Remember, it's the only part that does not get reused. We open up the payload bay for the very first time, get our view of the planet out the back window at the same time that we see everything in our cargo bay. Here's a wonderful first view of our beautiful Earth. And there's Tim Copra, and there was Tom Marshburn, Julie, folks very quickly getting ready to go to work. And you could see folks on the middeck, the flight deck crew. And now we're there for a couple of hours, and finally, we actually are getting the go as we remove the white room. And this will kind of speak for itself.
We're go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour, completing Kibo and fulfilling Japan's hope for an out-of-this-world space laboratory.
Houston, Endeavour, full program.
Doug Hurley. We haven't been up there very long. And after a couple days, it's time to go ahead and find this thing called the space station. So fortunately, I didn't lose it. Here's a great view of what we carry in our payload bay. This is the going to be the exposed facility, the Jeff. That's the jelly we'll attach to it. We'll see it later. And this is something called the ICC Integrated Cargo Carrier that has several payloads and batteries. I believe you could tell that this is just slightly sped up, but performed a valuable role for this great photography of our underside to make sure that the team on the ground can determine that our